Good morning. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Happy Monday. I'm Tom Mackenzie in London. These are the stories that set your agenda. Tokyo takes off. The Nikkei soars more than 4.5% after a surprise ruling party vote puts pro-stimulus Sanae Takaichi on course to become Japan's first female prime minister. Gold hitting another record high. French bond futures plunge as traders balk at President Macron's decision to appoint a broadly unchanged cabinet. We will be live in Paris with the latest. And President Trump presses Israel and Hamas to seal a deal to end the conflict in Gaza as Egypt hosts mediation talks later today. So European futures after record gains by the end of the week last week for European equity markets, looking to add to that today. Futures pointing higher by 0.1%. Here in the UK, the FTSE 100 is currently largely unchanged, range-bound across the FTSE 100. S&P futures then also at record highs and looking to add to that today. Futures pointing higher by 0.3%. Nasdaq 100 futures looking to add 103 points. The momentum trade around AI seemingly unabated, up 0.4% on that tech-heavy index. Let's flip the board and have a look cross-asset then. We are entering day 6 of the government shutdown in the US, and that story is tying in to what we're seeing around gold, around crypto. The 10-year at 4.15, yields currently moving 3 basis points, 4.15 on the benchmark 10-year, so 3 basis points higher so far on that benchmark. Across the Treasury curve, we're seeing a little bit of adjustment. The Japanese yen, this is crucial right now. The Japanese yen in focus on what could be the next prime minister, of course, with that focus on fiscal looseness, it seems. Crossing 150 for the Japanese yen. The currency is under pressure, down almost 2% as the political changes continue in that country. Brent at $65 a barrel, up 1.5%. So oil getting a pop on the back of an OPEC Plus decision to put a little fewer barrels of oil on the market than some had expected, 137,000. That is a smaller number than some traders expected. And gold closing in on $4,000 per troy ounce, up 1.3%. The rally close to 50% year to date. Let's cross over to Asia right now. Standing by for us for a check on Asian equities, and the broader picture is reporter, of course, Winnie Su. And Winnie, Japan squarely in focus, a red-hot rally right now in Japanese stocks.
Yeah, exactly. We see that Asian stocks edging slightly higher today, and it's really being driven by the gains in Japanese stocks after Sanae Takaichi got elected as the new leader for the ruling party, which now puts her in place to become Japan's next prime minister. Now, overall volumes in Asia is quite thin because we have a few markets on holiday today, but we see that Hong Kong stocks still extending that pullback after that big rally last week. Now, let's take a deeper dive into what's going on in Japan, cross-asset specifically, because we're seeing quite an interesting story here. It seems like the good story for stocks, not necessarily great stories for bonds. So we can see in the cross-asset board that the Nikkei 225 is up some 4%, the most since April. And that's really being driven by Takaichi's pro-stimulus and pro-monetary easing stance. And we see that's also pushing the dollar yen to pass that 150 level you mentioned just now, Tom. And that is also because on the expectation for the lower likelihood for the Bank of Japan to raise rates this month. Now, bonds are seeing a bit of a pressure, especially the longer maturity ones, on that concerns around more fiscal spending. Now, we take a deeper dive into what's going on sector-wise in Japanese stocks because we see a few sectors really standing out. We have defense stocks and also tech stocks up some 10% or so. And that is also on expectation for Takaichi to focus on economic security and also focus on the technology industry's advancement. But interestingly, we are seeing the bank shares, the bank index specifically being one sector that's really not doing great this today. We saw that it's pairing a bit of a losses here, but earlier was down quite a bit, driven by expectation for the Bank of Japan to delay its rate hikes. And now we are only pricing in some 20% for the BOJ to raise rates for this month.
Okay, Winnie Su in Hong Kong. Thank you very much indeed, with the market reaction, of course, to the politics of Japan. For more details on what is transpiring there, Japan's leadership election result, of course, let's bring in Asia Trade co-anchor Sherry Ann, who is in Tokyo for us. Sherry Ann, Sherry, fantastic to get your kind of insights into the political changes in Japan and what it means, of course, for markets. And the reaction is there, as we can see today. So who is, for those uninitiated then, who is Sanae Takaichi? And why are markets betting on a dovish policy shift and more fiscal stimulus?
Yeah, I mean, I love how the markets are reacting because it really tells you the story of who Sanae Takaichi is, right? I mean, Winnie just mentioned those defense stocks gaining ground. She's a foreign policy hawk who wants to see more defense spending, tech shares rallying. She has talked about more of those strategic investments. She is pro-nuclear, so we're seeing utilities gaining ground, exporters gaining ground because the Japanese yen is weakening so much because she has talked about really being against the Bank of Japan hiking rates. She has toned down that rhetoric in this round of the election. Remember, 3 times the charm. She ran for the head of the LDP. She finally got it. She's expected now to become the first female prime minister when we have a parliamentary vote later this month. But it's really about those stimulus packages that she has been talking about, promising cash handouts, tax rebates, even hinting at raising the tax-free income allowance before the end of the year, which is really causing the gyrations in the JGB yields. We're talking about spiking in the long end and yields falling in the short end because of BOJ policies. She has talked about potentially needing extra bond issuance that might be unavoidable. So interestingly, our Bloomberg opinion columnist Garode Reedy saying that potentially her idol is Margaret Thatcher, but she also has the fears of potentially becoming Liz Truss because of the potential of causing market panic on expansionary policies.
I mean, we love the fact that you're tying in UK political references to this story in Japan. And Sherry, look, you touched on the fact that she's a defence hawk. What does that tell us about diplomatically where Japan, under her potential leadership, would sit vis-à-vis its relationship with the US and, of course, with Korea?
There's a high chance that President Trump will like the new prime minister's policies because we have seen her advocate for more defense spending here in Japan, which is what President Trump wants to see. At the same time, of course, we do have President Trump wanting the agreement on trade with Japan. And we have her, Takaichi, actually pushing back a little bit and saying that she wants to renegotiate parts of that trade deal. Now, she's walked back some of that commentary, but that is something that we'll have to watch closely because now we are expecting, according to some local media reports, that President Trump will be coming to Japan later this month. So after she gets appointed prime minister by a parliamentary vote, the expectation is high that we will get that summit with President Trump. But it will be a very busy agenda when it comes to foreign policy. We do have the East Asia Summit in Malaysia also coming up, the APEC Summit also coming up in South Korea, at a time when, of course, tensions are high with neighbors such as China. We have seen, of course, the U.S. want to restrain China at a time when Sanae Takaichi has also been more hawkish towards Beijing. She has talked about increasing and deepening ties with Taipei, which will not sit well with Beijing. Now, will she visit the controversial Yasukuni Shrine that also honors war criminals is a big question. And if she does, that could be problematic for Japan's relationship with South Korea as well.
OK, so we'll watch for that domestic development, if indeed, of course, that comes through and what that could tell us about relationships with China. Co-anchor of the Asia Trade, Sherry Ann. Sherry, thank you very much indeed. Now, a government shutdown in the US is heading into a second week without any sign of an imminent breakthrough in talks. For more on how the markets are reacting to that element of the story, let's bring in Bloomberg's Valerie Teitel right now. Val, yet another week of no official data then out of the US.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. We really need the government shutdown to end sometime around Wednesday in order to get non-farm payrolls back on this week's calendar for a potential Friday's release. But there was really little progress in Washington around a breakthrough this weekend, and that's leading markets to really concentrate more on what's going on with Japan, with Sherry Ann giving a great breakdown there of the big spender, Takaichi, now headed into the prime minister role. I do want to mention, though, that we are seeing a reaction when it comes to gold and Bitcoin, and I want to tie that into the theme that we have now yet another economy whose inflation is running above target, comfortable with loose fiscal policy, comfortable with loose monetary policy, another economy being run hot. So we are seeing gold breach reach yet another record high this morning. Also seeing Bitcoin, at least yesterday's trade, breached 125K. So this kind of flood into alternative assets means that traders and investors are looking for some protection for these economies who are running inflation above their target. We are seeing a move in the back end of the bond space, as you guys were mentioning, but it's wild. It's mostly contained when it comes to the Treasury move. Yes, those 30-year JGB yields are 13 basis points higher, but we're only 4 basis points higher when it comes to the back end of the Treasury market. And this is really something to watch today, Tom. Watch the back end of the gilt market. Watch the back end of the French market as well, because we know a rising tide really lifts all boats. And if these JGB yields really lead to a spike in global yields, it could mean some headwinds for that new French government, for the UK government as well. But as long as we're contained, this equity market rally will continue. We have U.S. futures in the green following the Nikkei's record high in their session today.
OK, follow the steer then from Valerie Teitel when it comes to looking at the back end of the bond markets, of course, and the yield curve on the moves that we're seeing over in Japan. Val, thank you very much indeed. We'll certainly be keeping a close eye on the sovereign debt of France as well, because the French president has appointed a broadly unchanged cabinet, sparking an immediate backlash from opposition parties. Let's get more from Bloomberg's Caroline Gonat, who, of course, is in Paris for us. Caroline, who then is in the new government?
It took 3 weeks for Sébastien Lecornu, the new prime minister, to form his government. And the least we can say is that it's very far from a revolution. As you mentioned, the cabinet is broadly unchanged, with most of the heavyweights from his predecessor, François Bayrou, staying. For example, Bruno Retailleau at the Interior Ministry, Jean-Noël Barrot at the Foreign Ministry. You got the surprise, however, of the comeback of Bruno Le Maire, this time at the Defense Ministry, replacing Lecornu, who's now become a Prime Minister. And of course, he had also to replace the Finance Minister because Lombard was too much associated with the budget plan of François Bayrou. So now we've got Roland Lescure, 58 years old, one of the first allies of Emmanuel Macron back in 2017. He previously was briefly a member of the Socialist Party under Dominique Strauss-Kahn. Then he went on to work for nearly a decade in Canada, heading the Quebec Pension Fund, one of the biggest in North America. And then more recently worked with Emmanuel Macron as Industry Minister and most recently Vice President of the National Assembly. Of course, this cabinet broadly unchanged. Reaction from the opposition parties was quite quick. National rally of Marine Le Pen saying this was pathetic. The socialists will hear from the First Secretary Olivier Faure on the radio this morning in just about 1 hour from now. But they've already said that the risk of censure, the risk of no confidence is increasing again. And even within Lecornu's own camp, the Republicans are also disappointed with the return of Bruno Le Maire and are holding another crisis meeting this morning. So clearly a lot of backlash from opposition parties. Lecornu faces a very, very risky week, just 3 weeks after being named. Next test will be tomorrow afternoon with his general policy speech at 3 p.m. Paris time.
OK, Bloomberg's Caroline Gonat in Paris. We're going to have more from Caroline in the second half of this show as well, and more analysis on the prospects of a budget being passed or not. Of course, that remains a key question mark for France. Caroline Gonat in Paris for us, and we'll be bringing Caroline back again in about 30 minutes' time. Here's what else to think about then in the week ahead. Tomorrow, I'll be sitting down for an interview with Jamie Dimon, of course, the CEO of JP Morgan. We'll be talking about technology, how they've lent into that, but also, of course, Jamie's views on this US and global economy. So tune in for that interview tomorrow. That will be airing during Bloomberg Tech in the US around 4 p.m. UK time, 4:40 p.m. UK time. And on Thursday, China reopens after the Golden Week holiday. We'll get some data in terms of the consumer impulse in China. And on Thursday, the ECB accounts of its last meeting. So some insight and colour in terms of how the ECB is thinking about the months and quarters ahead, with inflation at around that 2% level for the ECB. You can get a roundup of the stories you need to know to get your day going. In today's edition of Daybreak, terminal subscribers can go to DAYB Go on the terminal, and the decision by OPEC Plus to put 137,000 additional barrels on the market is front and centre. Slightly fewer than some had expected. Oil up in the session today, but is a surplus building. Coming up, as President Trump pushes for Israel and Hamas talks, could there finally be a settlement to the conflict in Gaza? We have the latest. That is next. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Now, US President Donald Trump is pressing Israel and Hamas to seal a settlement to the conflict that, of course, has devastated Gaza and destabilized much of the Middle East. The two sides are set for mediation talks in Egypt beginning later today. Hamas has agreed to release the last of the Israeli hostages, while signaling that the rest of the US peace plan is subject to negotiation.
We had some very good meetings. The countries of the world, a lot of the countries surrounding Israel, frankly, Muslim, Arab, and many others have had great meetings with Hamas, and it looks like it's working.
Well, let's bring in Bloomberg's Jumana Takaichi in Dubai. Jumana, so Hamas responding then to this 20-point Gaza plan on Friday. What was in that response, and how has it been received by Israel?
Yeah, well, the response came quite late Friday evening. There had been an anticipation of them actually responding to the 20-point peace plan proposal that was put forward by the U.S. Alongside Netanyahu last week. So the response came through. And what it did show was that Hamas were, in principle, agreed to many elements that were in the plan, including the immediate end to the war, the release of hostages, the full release of all of the hostages, both alive and deceased, in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. And then the final point is that they have accepted the idea that future governance of Gaza will be handed over to a committee of apolitical Palestinians. However, and there is a however here, they have also said that they want to be part of those future discussions, which is a deal breaker for many of the negotiators, including, of course, Israel and members of Netanyahu's own cabinet. There's also no mention whatsoever of disarmament in their official response. So over the course of the weekend, that was met with perhaps cautious optimism from the Israeli public that we could potentially be seeing a watershed moment in this war that's been going on for almost 2 years now with the release of the hostages. But at the same time, there has been a lot of pushback about the fact that Hamas are not really signing on to disarmament, and still many questions about the future governance of Gaza prevail. That being said, the Israeli Prime Minister did give a 6-minute televised address to the nation on Saturday, where he did say that they are on the brink of a great achievement, that they are ready to sign up to the first phase of Trump's plan for the immediate release of all hostages. However, he did say that Hamas must move quickly or else all bets will be off. The discussions will be continuing today in Egypt. We have Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, flying to Egypt to attend those further mediation talks with hopes of a breakthrough. But we will see whether it's successful. And the sign of whether it's successful, Tom, is whether those hostages are actually released this week.
OK, so that is what we watch for. And it's clear, and you reference, of course, the advisors for President Trump and those connected to him. It's pretty clear he's keen to get this deal or a deal over the line. Just outline for us what the president has been doing to get these two sides back around that negotiating table.
Yeah, well, he was very quick to embrace Hamas's response on Friday evening. And I think most of the world was pretty surprised by that, because still there were a lot of holes in Hamas's response. But that is reflective of the fact that he wants to get this deal done and dusted. Axios were reporting over the weekend that once again he had quite a testy phone call with the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and said, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You have to take this chance and get it over the line. He's putting pressure on both Israel and Hamas to get the deal done. He's clearly been listening to some of his Arab allies in the region. And one of the reasons we were able to get to that 20-point document last week is because Qatar, alongside Egypt, did participate in getting that document together. So he's been reaching out to all parties involved with those mediations and those negotiations. And then finally, I would say, and perhaps this is more speculative, but bear in mind that on October 10, the Nobel Peace Prize Committee will be announcing this year's winner. You've got to think that maybe that's being factored into some of the timing around this and the fact that Trump would like to see this done and dusted ASAP. No secret that he's been vying for the Nobel Peace Prize. But bottom line is there is a lot of pressure and there does appear to be progress. But to go back to what I said, at the end of the day, what everyone wants to see here is an end to the war and the release of those hostages.
OK, Bloomberg's Jemana Pasechi in Dubai with that important update for us on what to watch for in the hours and days ahead out of that region. Jemana, thank you. Coming up, with the green energy transition at a crossroads, we're going to look at the role that banks are playing in financing the shift away from fossil fuels. That is next. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back. Now, bank financing has a critical role to play in propelling the energy transition away from fossil fuels, of course. But this year, we have seen major lenders seemingly edge away from some earlier commitments. For the details, let's bring in Jonathan Luan, Bloomberg NEF's head of finance and investment research. Jonathan, so you and the team have been looking at this. What kind of shifts have you seen from the banks in terms of the flow of money into renewables, but also into fossil fuels?
Thanks for having me, Tom. There are good news and bad news here. The good news is that many of these banks have said they're still committed to climate change and sustainable finance, and we find that largely being true. The bad news, though, is that the global banking system is a massive ship that isn't turning as quickly. At BNEF, we found that last year, for every dollar of bank financing that went into fossil fuel energy supply, just about 89 cents went into low-carbon energy supply. That ratio has barely changed over 2023, and we actually need $4 of low-carbon investment for every dollar of fossil fuel investment just in this decade to stay on course for net zero. So still a long way to go.
That's a massive gap then, $4 to 1 versus exactly 89 cents to 1. We're not even matching it right now. Are there examples of success stories where banks have improved in terms of their clean energy financing?
Top banks have actually struggled over the past couple of years to improve this low carbon to fossil fuel financing ratio. JP Morgan, for example, the largest bank globally when it comes to energy supply financing, has had a pretty flat ratio of 0.7 to 1 over the past 4 years. On the other hand, BNP Paribas, for example, here in Europe, has been able to double its ratio since 2021, largely because they've been shrinking their fossil fuel book. In Japan, top banks like MUFG and Mizuho have also been able to increase their low-carbon flow to help with this ratio.
Are banks still committed when it comes to disclosing their lending to clean energy? Are those commitments still there by the banks?
We're very happy to see that over the past 12 months or so, a number of North American banks actually picking up this ratio metric. So JP Morgan and Citi have published their ratio. In Canada, RBC has disclosed its methodology, and Scotiabank has also committed to publish its ratio next year. So far, these banks have been calculating this ratio just slightly differently. Over time, we hope there's going to be a convergence so investors can compare institutions across the board. But just by measuring and disclosing this ratio continuously, it should also be a helpful internal strategy tool to help banks measure climate alignment, but also to better think about how to capture opportunities on the low-carbon side of the transition.
Smart breakdown of what's happening. We'll get you back on maybe in a few months' time to see if there's been much progress there. Jonathan Ryan, thank you very much indeed. Bloomberg NEF's head of finance and investment research on the gap that remains, significant as it is in terms of the financing around renewable energy from the big lenders. Coming up, we will be joined by BENEDICTE LOWE from BNP Paribas to get a view in terms of how to think about the French political crisis rearing its head again and how to position in these markets. That's coming up. This is Bloomberg. Good morning, this is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. I'm Tom Mackenzie in London. These are the stories that set your agenda. Tokyo takes off, the Nikkei soars almost 5% after a surprise ruling party vote puts pro-stimulus Sanae Takaichi on course to become Japan's first female prime minister. French bond futures plunge as traders balk at President Macron's decision to appoint a broadly unchanged cabinet. We'll be live in Paris with the latest. And President Trump pressing Israel and Hamas to seal a deal to end the conflict in Gaza as Egypt hosts mediation talks later today. Let's get to the markets then, and the rally, it seems, is set to continue. Global stocks, of course, at record highs. US futures currently pointed to gains of 0.3% on the S&P E-minis. The shutdown in the US entering its second week, 6 days now in terms of the US government shutdown. European futures pointing higher, modestly slow, just up 3 points after record highs that came through last week as well. FTSE 100 futures currently flat. Nasdaq 100 futures looking to add 93 points. Let's flip the board and have a look across asset. 415, yields are up, particularly at the long end when it comes to US Treasuries, up 3 basis points at 415 on the benchmark US 10-year. The ripple effects in terms of what's happening in the Japan bond markets as well. But the currency is firmly in focus when it comes to the Japanese yen, crossing 150. The weakness is there, down 2% on expectations that there will be a more dovish Prime Minister over in Tokyo. Brent up 1.4% and gold rallying again, closing in on $4,000 per troy ounce. Now, French bond futures tumbling in a sign that traders are giving Macron's new cabinet the thumbs down. Let's bring in Bloomberg's Caroline Connor in Paris. Caroline, I've asked you this question many times before and many times possibly into the future as well. What are the chances of this cabinet passing a budget?
Tom, obviously, stability of this French government broadly unchanged does not necessarily mean stability on the markets. We're seeing the impact on the French bonds already with the increasing risk of yet another government collapse, possibly as soon as this week, just 3 weeks after Prime Minister Le Cornu was named to replace François Bayrou. And clearly, the budget deadline is also looming, because the Prime Minister and the government need to present the budget by mid-October, which is already next week. So Parliament can have 70 days to debate it in order for it to pass before the end of the year. So clearly time is running out. Le Cornu has given Parliament the possibility of really debating the budget by announcing on Friday that he would give up using the 49.3 article in the Constitution, which allows the government to force a bill through Parliament without a vote. He said he is not going to do that this time, meaning the budget debates may also be dragging on for months. And even if they miss the deadline, of course, in France, we have this system called the special laws that allow for the budget of 2025 to be rolled over. So there won't be any government shutdown, but clearly this political crisis is not ending at the moment. And most economists we've actually been talking to would be satisfied just if Le Cornu can survive, even if that means the spending cuts will likely be watered down, probably about half, 20 billion euros of what the predecessor of Le Cornu, François Bayrou, was hoping to do in this next budget.
OK, Bloomberg's Caroline Connor in Paris with that update. Thank you very much. Indeed. Let's get more analysis in terms of how the markets are reacting to the events in France and beyond. But we'll start with France. I'll bring in BENEDICTE, LOWE, equity derivatives strategist for Europe at BNP Paribas Markets 360. BENEDICTE, always wonderful to get your insights. Thank you for joining us around the studio and around the desk this morning. How much and to what extent are the markets relatively sanguine about the political events in France, or is there a risk that is being mispriced right now in terms of French assets?
Yeah. If we take a step back and look at the performance of French equities over the past few months, and even since the previous election we had in June 2024, we've seen the CAC lag. It's one of the main laggards in Europe. This year we coupled with the SMI underperformance. So part of that political noise and news happening is already in the price. Also, if you look on the vol side at the vol option prices, they are trading at a premium versus their European counterparts. So some of that negative news that has been evolving over the past few months and that has been also increasing since September is already in the price on French equities.
What do you think would be the catalyst for investors to see that as a clearing event and wanting to get more exposure to French equities? Would it be the passing of a budget, or is it something more nuanced that would allow fund flows back in a sustained way into French stocks and make up for that catch-up?
Yeah, probably in the short term, we need that budget to pass. I think investors need to see that a budget is able to be passed, and we can kind of move on to the next year's story, which is one we're going to see a better growth coming from fiscal stimulus in Europe, where we've got the ECB rate cuts that we had this year that is feeding into the economy into better data. But first, we need the budget to kind of focus on another story in France.
And more broadly across Europe, you think you're pretty clear there is more room to run when it comes to the equity rally broadly across European stocks?
Yeah. So we said last week, really, European stocks breaking out of what we call their eternal range that they were in for the last 20 years or so. And we think, tactically speaking, this has been enabled by the fact that the dealer long gamma positioning that we had in September expired, and that led the market able to be to move more freely. Now, when you look at year-end tailwind for Europe, the one that we mentioned in early September, they're still very valid. We've got some stimulus that is coming from Germany that should feed into better data, even though in 2025 it might be more via the confidence channel more so than the hard data, but that's still on the positive side. You also have positioning that is on the low side, quite light in Europe, and you get earnings expectation that remain also quite depressed. So the bar to surprise in Europe remains overall quite low.
When does the earnings story turn around for Europe? Because there has been this significant gap between the earnings story growth, double digits, low double digits for the US, but still contraction when it comes to European earnings most recently. When does that story start to shift?
Yeah, so we've seen the past earnings season hasn't been really great for European stocks. Yeah. There was a lag versus the US, as you mentioned. This earnings season might be actually still on the early side, maybe more confidence from CEOs saying they expect pickup in demand from that German fiscal stimulus, from increase investment spending into Europe, but the direction that we're going to is more positive on the data side from the macro feeding into the corporate side.
Does the strong single currency remain a headwind for that thesis around European stocks?
That is a headwind. We've seen at the past earning season that this has weighed on the top line, and this has been actually a tailwind for US stocks as a RV type of components. So that will be one of the headwinds. We haven't seen the same type of appreciation of the euro dollar that we saw for the past earning season. So I think some of that negative news is already in the price, and this is kind of our point for Europe. A lot of the negative news, and we see that in valuation, is already in the price, and this is why we still have confidence that stocks can rise higher from where they are.
And you're watching the data and you think that the macro data of Europe is going to be supportive for this stock story, European stock story. How do you play, specifically, how do you play the relative regional strength of nations like Spain and Greece and Portugal? How do you play that story where they are outperforming their historical precedent? They're certainly performing better on a macro level than France and even Germany at this point.
Yeah, so the case of Spain is actually quite interesting. The IBEX, the key index in Spain, is heavily weighted towards banks, which is one of our top pick in Europe. So we think this is one of the index that should continue to perform well in this environment where we're going to get increased loan from the investment spending from that German fiscal stimulus throughout Europe. That should be positive tailwind. The economy is expected to be back up, so that is a very cyclical sector. So IBEX should be one of the top performing index in that context.
Okay, so even Spain will benefit from that heavier spending over in Germany on defence. Benedicte Lowe, thank you very much indeed. Constructive on these European equity markets. Benedicte Lowe, equity derivative strategist for Europe at BNP Paribas Markets 360. Now to some other stories making the news this Monday. Oil jumping after OPEC Plus agreed to raise production by a modest amount, staving off traders' fears of a super-sized increase. At a meeting on Sunday, OPEC and partners, including Russia, backed a 137,000 barrel a day increment. The group's latest decision came despite an earlier difference of position between co-leaders Saudi Arabia and Russia. And Czech billionaire Andrej Babiš has turned to forming a governing majority a day after winning a resounding election victory. The populist outperformed pre-election polls to secure 35% of the vote, the second best result of a winning party in the Czech Republic since the fall of communism. Babiš says talks are already underway with far-right and populist parties that have denounced EU policies on migration and climate. Coming up, we will discuss the insatiable demand for AI computing power with Nscale, a British data centre company that's recently raised more than $400 million in funding. We're going to speak to the firm's chief commercial officer. That is next. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Now, insatiable demand for AI computing power is creating a gold rush for data center companies. One of the biggest winners is a 17-month-old, yes, 17-month-old UK crypto mining carve-out, Nscale. The company has raised $433 million last week, just days after a $1.1 billion funding round, which was Europe's largest ever. Joining me now is Nscale's Chief Commercial Officer, KARL HAVARD. KARL, thank you for your time this morning. You guys seem to have come out of nowhere. For those of us watching this space, you've raised a lot of capital. You partnered with the likes of NVIDIA, OpenAI, and Microsoft. You seem to be central in terms of the UK-US investment plans around AI. What's happened, KARL? How has this moment been for you all?
Well, hugely exciting. You said 17 months, actually. It feels like we're a little bit older than that. But, yeah, it may appear that we've come out of nowhere, but I think by design, what we saw in the AI space moving into it, and a lot of us in the organisation have a background in AI and cloud computing, is the ability to sort the supply chain out from an energy point of view. So we were able to secure some strong energy contracts globally, actually, and then in our partnerships with NVIDIA and some of the other OEMs that we work with, we're able then to start to secure contracts and then deploy accordingly. And I think now we're in a place where that has set us up to be not necessarily the spotlights on us, but we're in a really strong position in the UK and Europe because we now have access to those places to locate the GPUs, as we call them. And it's an exciting time, very exciting time.
Yeah, I bet. KARL, look, help us understand what the difference is, what you guys are able to offer that some of your competitors like CoreWeave are not able to offer. What differentiates you from the CoreWeaves of the world and other neo-clouds?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. I mean, CoreWeave are a fantastic example. They set the pace in the neo-cloud. But another strong organisation coming out of the US. I think what's different from us is we're coming out of the UK and Europe. And I don't think, certainly from the UK perspective, there's ever been the opportunity with the level setting of data center build and the introduction of AI for the UK and Europe to then create what we've called ourselves an AI hyperscaler from the beginning. So that one of the differentials that we take to market is be able to offer true sovereignty in the region, both UK and EU. When you compare us to other neo-clouds in our space, I think there's two things that set us apart. There is the absolute scale that we're pushing at. And you can see the recent investments of 1.1 billion with the 433 million CSAFE following the day after. We've had a lot of support and vote of confidence from NVIDIA, Dell, Nokia, and also institutional investors in order to go large. And I think that has helped us differentiate ourselves from other neo-cloud providers. And the other differentiator is the ability to offer true private AI cloud. So we can configure AI cloud specific for the use case of organizations that they want, rather than just design something, deploy it, and then if people want it, they have to conform.
KARL, what does go large mean? How many data centers are you planning to build out between now and, say, the end of 2026?
It's end of 2026. Okay, by the end of 2026, we should have around about 400 to 500 megawatts live, depending on how quickly our team can deliver. We build and we also colo, just to make that clear. And that would mean the deployment of up to 190,000 GPUs initially. But beyond 2020, end of 2026 and into 2027, then we'll be going, with our contracts with Microsoft and also with OpenAI and NVIDIA themselves. We'll be pushing, well, our aim is to push to the 300,000 mark.
You've mentioned NVIDIA a couple of times, KARL. You originally partnered, or you had a partnership, I believe, with AMD. Does that partnership still hold, or is this solely with NVIDIA now?
I mean, AMD are a fantastic organisation, and we still use our AMD chips up in Norway for our inferencing as a service perspective. However, where the market is today for training, tuning, and inferencing, and have that level of versatility, then NVIDIA seem to have 90% plus of the market share, and therefore, it makes sense for us to meet that market demand. And it's not just us and NVIDIA creating that demand. We're actually getting requested from our customers. That's exactly the type of config that they need. But totally going forward, as the inferencing market takes out, then AMD, Intel, other chip manufacturers will play a part in our future.
OK. Oh, right. Intel may play a role as well. And look, you also touched on that when we mentioned the $433 million raise, which is a safe note or safe structure. So that would give investors rights to equity in the company at some point in the future. Are you able to tell us, Karl, who the new investors are and what the targets are that kind of baked into that agreement?
Well, I can tell you part of that. I mean, in the public domain, you'll probably see who the investors are. So it's led by Arca, a fantastic partner for us up in Norway. We have Blue Owl, we have Fidelity from an institutional investment point of view. We have NVIDIA themselves, we've mentioned. We've had Dell, we've got Nokia. So we have a mix. And of course, Sandon Capital, who've been with us on the journey all the way, are still, they still believe in us, they still back us. And that's a fantastic vote of confidence for us going forward. So, yeah, we're hugely delighted where we're going to go. And by the way, your surprise about Intel, hopefully you saw a few weeks back, maybe 2 weeks back, the Intel and NVIDIA partnership as well there. So
yes.
So there is a strong alliance amongst those technology vendors.
Okay. What is the biggest constraints to growth right now? Is it supply chains? Is it energy? Or is it the GPUs?
So it's no longer the GPU supply chain as it was 2 years ago. That seems to have leveled itself out, which is great. The real constraint, and it depends on the territory where you're deploying, but if I was to take the UK, then the real constraint at the moment is energy at scale and the right type of energy and ideally the right cost of energy as well. So that's the area that we're working hard with the UK government, also with other data center providers and energy companies to be able to give us that foundation to start to build upon. And you're probably aware that the UK has the AI Growth Zone initiative, where they're supporting areas in the UK where they can be, repurposed old steelworks, old manufacturing sites where they already have the right base level infrastructure in place where we can deploy. But the energy is the key thing. And ideally, data centers and our data center building can be a catalyst to help the UK bring renewable energies into the national grid as well. But that's a long journey for us to go on.
What do you say, Karl, what do you say to those who are concerned about this mismatch between the significant spend on AI infrastructure, which clearly you and Nscale are benefiting from, versus the revenue story, this mismatch between the spend on AI infrastructure and the revenues that are coming through at the enterprise level?
So do you mean the CapEx versus the future revenues coming through the organization? Yes. So
exactly.
Yeah, the state of play is where we are, is we have to start from somewhere, and building data centers is not cheap. And also buying the AI infrastructure is not cheap either. However, once that's installed and we get the flywheel turning, then over a period of time, just between the 2 to 3 year point, then the revenues will then start to exceed the initial CapEx associated with those various installations. So you're right. I mean, at the moment, if you take a snapshot in time, it looks very unbalanced in one area. But hopefully in 2 to 3 years' time, you'll start to see the numbers stacking up in the right way.
Okay, that's really interesting. So we look at 2 to 3 years possibly to see that balance come into play.
Yeah.
Nscale's Chief Commercial Officer, KARL HAVARD, really appreciate your time this morning. Fascinating story in terms of the role that Nscale is now playing in the infrastructure build-out story in the UK and in Europe, of course, as well, partnering with the likes of OpenAI, NVIDIA and Microsoft. KARL, thank you. Now, sticking with tech, NVIDIA partner Honhai, meanwhile, has reported 11% growth in quarterly sales, signalling healthy demand for AI infrastructure. Revenue met analyst expectations, totaling around $68 billion in the third quarter. Honhai, also known as Foxconn, says it expects server revenue to more than double in the second quarter, while its consumer electronics business remains stagnant. Plenty more coming up. We're going to look at gold, Bitcoin and oil for you. This is Bloomberg.